The grand hall of the Zyrathian Imperial Palace stretched so vast that clouds formed near its ceiling. Thousands of alien dignitaries stood in perfect rows, their scales, feathers, and chitinous armor gleaming under the artificial suns that lit the throne room. At the center of it all sat Emperor Vex Thor, his massive reptilian form draped across a throne carved from a single meteorite. His golden eyes scanned the crowd with barely concealed contempt. Marcus Chin stood near the back trying to make himself invisible. He wore a simple gray jumpsuit with an Earth Alliance patch on the shoulder, looking painfully out of place among the elaborate robes and ceremonial armor around him. 6 months ago, Earth had been forced to join the Zyrathian Empire after a brief, one-sided war. Marcus was just a mechanic from the Houston station, but when Earth needed someone to attend this tribute ceremony, his name got picked from a lottery. Lucky him. "The human will approach," boomed a translator device echoing through the hall. Marcus walked forward, his boots clicking on the polished stone floor. The crowd parted and he could hear the whispers and chittering laughter. Humans were still a novelty here, considered primitive and weak. He climbed the steps to the throne platform, his heart pounding. Emperor Vex Thor leaned forward, his massive head tilting to study Marcus like a bug under glass. "So this is what Earth sends. A worker. How appropriate for such a simple species." The crowd erupted in laughter. Marcus kept his face neutral. "Don't react," he told himself. "Just get through this." "Your people claim to be builders and fixers," the Emperor continued, his voice dripping with amusement. "You take broken things and make them work again. Is this true?" "We do our best, Your Majesty," Marcus said quietly. "Excellent." The Emperor clapped his clawed hands together. "Then I have a gift for you. A perfect gift for a human mechanic." 2 guards dragged something onto the platform. At first, Marcus thought it was a pile of rags, but then he saw the movement. It was a dragon, or what was left of one. The creature was maybe 10 feet long, its body covered in dull purple scales that should have shimmered but instead looked diseased. One wing hung at a wrong angle, completely shattered. The other was twisted and scarred. A rear leg dragged uselessly. The dragon's golden eyes looked up at Marcus with a mixture of pain and resignation. "This is Scareth," the Emperor announced. "From the Drakmor species. Once they were warriors. Now they are pets and decorations. This particular specimen is defective. Useless. Even as a trophy, it has no value." He waved a dismissive hand. "But you humans fix broken things, yes? So fix this." The entire hall exploded with laughter. Marcus heard bets being placed in various alien languages. Some were wagering on how many hours before Marcus killed the creature. Others bet he would simply abandon it. Marcus looked down at the dragon. Scareth stared back at him and Marcus saw something in those eyes. Not hope. Hope was probably long dead in this creature. But there was intelligence there. Awareness. The dragon understood exactly what was happening. This was meant to be humiliating for both of them. "I accept your gift, Your Majesty," Marcus said. He knelt down and carefully slid his arms under the dragon's body. Scareth flinched, expecting pain, but Marcus was gentle. The creature was lighter than he expected, probably from starvation. "Thank you." The Emperor looked puzzled for a moment as if Marcus had missed the joke. Then he laughed even harder. "Take your prize, human. Let us see the miracles your species can perform." Marcus carried Scareth down the long hall toward the exit. The dragon's breath was shallow and rapid against his chest. Behind them, the laughter continued. Someone called out, 3 days before it dies." Another voice answered, "I give it 1. Marcus held the dragon closer and whispered, too quiet for the translator to catch, "I've got you now. We're going to figure this out." Scareth's eyes closed, but one claw very gently gripped Marcus's sleeve. Mira spent her entire sleep shift in the station archives, scrolling through files marked, Extinct Culture Studies. Most workers avoided these records. They were depressing reminders of species the Convergence had crushed during its expansion. But buried in the data she found what she needed. Dracovians required high concentrations of iron, calcium and silicate compounds. Their bodies processed minerals through extreme heat, breaking them down in their plasma cores. The energy supplements the prison provided were designed for cold-blooded species. For a Dracovian they were like feeding sawdust to a human. She started small. The station cafeteria had a synthesizer that could create basic compounds. Mira used her own ration credits to gather ingredients. Iron-rich vegetables from her homeworld. Calcium powder. Ground mineral supplements meant for construction paste. She heated everything together until it formed a thick, dark broth that glowed faintly in the dim light of her quarters. looked terrible. It smelled like hot metal. But according to the data, it was what Karathos needed. Getting it to level 17 was harder. She hid the container in her maintenance kit, her heart pounding every time she passed another worker. If anyone discovered what she was doing, she would lose her job. Worse, she might end up in a cell herself. The heavy door slid open. Karathos lifted his head slightly, those ember eyes brightening when he saw her. The human returns. Come to check the power again? I brought you something. Mira pulled out the container, her hands shaking slightly. I'm not sure if I made it right. The archive said Dracovians need minerals and heat. This has both. Karathos stared at the container like it was something from a dream. The chains around him hummed louder, responding to the sudden surge of emotion from their prisoner. You made me food, he said slowly. You spent your own resources to feed me. It's just soup, Mira said, though her voice was tight. She moved closer, carefully navigating around the chains. Can you reach it, or do I need to help? The dragon's eyes glistened. For a moment she thought he might cry, though she didn't know if Dracovians could. I can manage. Set it before me. She placed the container down and stepped back. Karathos lowered his massive head, the chains clinking and straining. He drank slowly, and as the liquid touched his tongue, his entire body seemed to shudder. The dull scales along his neck began to shimmer, just slightly. 300 years, he whispered after the container was empty. 300 years, and I had forgotten what real sustenance felt like. Little human, do you understand what you have done? I just gave you soup, Mira said, but she was smiling. No. You gave me dignity. You saw suffering and chose to ease it, even though I am your enemy. Even though my kind fought against your convergence. You're not my enemy, Mira said firmly. And it's not my convergence. I just live here. Over the following weeks, Mira returned whenever her schedule allowed. Each time she brought more soup, adjusting the recipe as Karathos described the tastes of his homeworld. He told her about crystal mountains that sang in the wind. About flight dances performed under twin moons. About a civilization that had valued art and philosophy before the convergence arrived and called them aggressive. We defended our world, Karathos said one night. They called it terrorism. They said we were too dangerous to exist freely. So they broke us, scattered us, and chained the rest. Mira listened, her anger growing with each story. Around the prison, other inmates had noticed her visits. Word spread among the cells that a human showed kindness to the dragon. Some prisoners who had been hostile before began nodding to her in the corridors. But not everyone approved. Commander Zelthrak, the facility warden, reviewed the security logs one evening. His eyes narrowed at the records showing extended maintenance visits to Cell 7 Delta. Why does one human spend so much time with the dragon? He asked his assistant. Should we investigate, Commander? Zelthrak tapped his claws against the console. Watch her. I want to know what she's doing down there. In the deep cell, Mira didn't know she was being watched. She sat near Karathos, sharing stories of Earth while he listened with ancient, grateful eyes. And deep within his chest, something long dormant began to stir. His core, starved for so long, was finally beginning to heal. 6 weeks after the first bowl of soup, Mira entered the cell and immediately knew something was different. The air felt warmer than usual and Karathos' scales were glowing. Not the dull shimmer she had seen before, but a genuine inner light that pulsed gently with each breath. You look better, she said, setting down the container. Much better. Karathos lifted his head higher than she had ever seen him manage. The chain strained but didn't stop him. I feel better. Your kindness has done more than feed my body, little human. It has reminded me why life matters. Mira smiled and moved to place the soup in its usual spot, but Karathos made a strange sound. A rumble that came from deep in his chest. What's wrong? She asked. Nothing is wrong. Everything is right. For the first time in centuries I feel warmth in my core. Not anger. Not hatred. Something gentler. Something I thought I had lost forever. As he spoke, the glow in his chest intensified. It was beautiful, like watching sunrise through amber glass. The light spread through his body, traveling along his veins, reaching toward his wings. The quantum chains began to hum differently. Their blue glow flickered. Karathos, what's happening? I don't know, he said, wonder filling his voice. The chains respond to hostile energy. They drain rage and violence. But this feeling, this warmth you've helped restore, it's different. It's gratitude. Hope. Joy. The chains hummed louder, their frequency changing. Where they touched Karathos' scales, they started to glow brighter, then softer. The metal began to run like water, dripping in bright streams to the floor. Mira stepped back, her eyes wide. They're melting. Impossible, Karathos breathed, but he watched as chain after chain softened and fell away. First his neck, then his wings. The restraints around his legs liquefied and pooled on the ground. Alarms exploded through the facility. Red lights bathed the cell. The heavy doors slammed into lockdown, sealing them inside. Karathos rose to his full height for the first time in 300 years. His wings spread wide, magnificent and terrible. The glow in his chest was like a small sun now, filling the cell with golden light. I'm free, he said, his voice shaking. I could burn through this door. I could destroy this entire station. Mira should have been terrified. Every instinct should have screamed at her to run, to hide, to call for help. But she stood her ground, looking up at the massive dragon towering above her. You could, she agreed quietly. But you won't. How can you be sure? Because you're not the monster they said you were. You're Karathos. And you know that vengeance won't bring back what you lost. Heavy footsteps thundered in the corridor outside. Weapons charged. Commander Zelthrak's voice boomed through the intercom. Dragon. Stand down. Any hostile action will be met with lethal force. Karathos looked at the door, then back at Mira. She was so small, so fragile. One guard's stray shot could kill her. His hearts, both of them, ached with a feeling he hadn't experienced in centuries. He cared what happened to this human. She had given him back his soul. Get behind me, he said gently. The door exploded inward. Guards poured in, weapons raised. Suppression fire filled the air with crackling energy. Karathos spread his wings wide, creating a shield. The blast struck his scales and dissipated. Mira crouched behind him, safe within the shelter of his body. Stop. Karathos roared, his voice shaking the walls. I do not wish to fight. Commander Zelthrak entered, his weapon aimed at the dragon's head. You're escaping. You've broken your restraints. I am not escaping, Karathos said, his voice calm despite the weapons pointed at him. I am requesting diplomatic audience with the Convergence Council. Not as a prisoner. As a representative of my people. This human has shown me that justice still exists in the galaxy. I wish to seek it properly. Zelthrak's eyes narrowed. You expect us to believe. I am surrendering myself, Karathos interrupted. But I demand that proper protocols be followed. And I demand that this human be allowed to speak on my behalf. She has committed no crime except showing mercy. Mira stepped out from behind him, her legs shaking but her voice steady. I have evidence. Documentation. This facility violates sentient rights protocols. What's been done here is wrong and the galaxy needs to know. The commander's weapon lowered slightly. He had no protocol for this situation. A free dragon choosing diplomacy. A human maintenance worker demanding justice. The Convergence Council chamber was enormous, built to accommodate representatives from hundreds of species. Circular tiers rose toward a domed ceiling that showed the stars beyond. Mira had never seen anything like it. She stood in the center platform, feeling impossibly small, while thousands of eyes watched from above. Karathos stood beside her in specialized restraints, lighter than the chains but still present. He had insisted on wearing them to show his peaceful intentions. His scales gleamed in the chamber's light, healthy now, magnificent. Council Speaker Vornum, a tall being with silver skin and too many arms, called the session to order. This tribunal will hear the case of Karathos the Burnished, prisoner of Veilker Prime for 347 cycles. The dragon stands accused of breaking quantum restraints and potential escape attempt. However, he has requested diplomatic audience. This is highly irregular. Everything about this situation is irregular, said another council member, a floating jellyfish-like creature. How did he break chains designed to be unbreakable? Mira stepped forward, her voice shaking at first but growing stronger. I can explain that. My name is Mira Chen, human maintenance worker. I've been documenting conditions at Veilker Prime for the past 2 months. She activated her datapad and holographic images filled the chamber. Pictures of Karathos in his chains, the grooves worn into his scales. Records of the feeding system providing incompatible nutrients. Medical data showing the slow deterioration of his body. This isn't imprisonment, Mira said. This is torture. Slow execution disguised as justice. Murmurs rippled through the chamber. Some council members looked uncomfortable. Others angry. Commander Zelthrak stood from the prosecution section. The dragon is a war criminal. His people attacked Convergence forces. Did they? Mira pulled up more files. I found historical records. The Convergence arrived at the Dracovian homeworld and demanded immediate annexation. When the Dracovians asked for time to consider, Convergence forces began orbital bombardment. The Dracovians defended their world. That's not terrorism. That's survival. Karathos spoke then, his voice carrying easily through the vast chamber. I led my people in battle because we had no choice. We tried diplomacy. We tried negotiation. We were met with weapons. Yes, we fought. Yes, we destroyed Convergence ships. But we never attacked civilian targets. We never sought conquest. We only wanted to remain free. Your species was deemed too dangerous, Vornum said, but his voice lacked conviction. Too dangerous or too difficult to control? Karathos asked. How many other species have you labeled dangerous when they refused to submit? A ripple of energy passed through the chamber. Several council members from younger species shifted uncomfortably. They remembered their own struggles with the Convergence. A human representative stood then, Ambassador Okafor from Earth's diplomatic corps. The Convergence has principles it claims to uphold. Fair treatment of all sentient beings. Proportional justice. Rehabilitation over punishment. If these principles mean anything, then Veilker Prime is a violation of everything we stand for. Humans, Zelthrak sneered. You've been part of the Convergence for barely 20 years. You have no understanding of galactic security. We understand suffering, Ambassador Okafor replied calmly. And we understand that systems built on cruelty eventually crumble. My government supports a full investigation of Veilker Prime and a review of all long-term imprisonment cases. The debate raged for hours. Council members argued about security versus rights, about punishment versus mercy. But slowly a shift occurred. More voices joined the call for reform. Representatives from other species began sharing their own concerns about Convergence prison facilities. Finally, Council Speaker Vornum raised his hands for silence. This tribunal recognizes that questions have been raised that require serious investigation. Commander Zelthrak and his staff are suspended pending review. Veilker Prime will be audited by an independent committee. He turned to Karathos. As for you, Dragon, your case presents unique circumstances. Your restraints failed not through violence but through emotional transformation. This suggests the original sentencing may have been flawed. Karathos stood tall, waiting. You are granted conditional freedom, Vornum continued. You will work with the Convergence to locate any surviving members of your species. If peaceful contact is established, the Council will consider formal reparations and territorial restoration. The chamber erupted in noise. Some shouting approval, others protesting. Mira felt tears running down her face. Karathos looked at her, and something like a smile crossed his massive features. Thank you, little human, he said softly. You gave me more than soup. You gave me back my future. Ambassador Okafor approached them both. Mishchin, the new Galactic Rights Commission could use someone like you. Someone who sees beings instead of classifications. Interested. Mira looked up at Karathos, then at the ambassador. She thought about all the other prisoners still suffering in facilities across the galaxy. Yes, she said firmly. Very interested. 8 months after the tribunal, Mira stood on a mountainside that sang. The crystal formations around her vibrated in the wind, creating harmonies that seemed to come from another world. In a way they did. This was Dracovia, the homeworld she had only heard about in stories. The planet had been declared uninhabitable after the war, but that was a lie. The Convergence had simply wanted everyone to believe the Dracovians were gone. The Crystal Mountains still stood. The twin moons still rose each night. And now dragons filled the sky again. Mira watched as Karathos glided overhead, his wings catching the sunlight. He wasn't alone anymore. Using ancient communication methods buried in historical files, he had sent out calls across the galaxy. Slowly, carefully, Dracovians had emerged from hiding. 2,347 survivors. Some had been living in asteroid caves. Others had disguised themselves on remote planets. A few had been imprisoned like Karathos, though none for as long. Each one had a story of loss, of hiding, of hoping their people weren't truly extinct. Now they were coming home. Karathos landed beside Mira, the ground trembling slightly under his weight. The northern cliffs are being rebuilt. Families are choosing cave systems. It will take years to restore what was lost, but we're making progress. It's beautiful, Mira said, watching young dragons practice flying in the distance. Their scales gleamed in colors she had never seen on Karathos, greens and blues and purples mixed with gold. You gave us this, Karathos said quietly. One human with soup and stubborn kindness changed everything. Mira shook her head. I just did what was right. The council changed things. Ambassador Okafor and the others fought for reforms. Because you showed them it mattered. Karathos lowered his head to her level. Vailker Prime is now a rehabilitation center. 17 other facilities have been investigated. 4 have been shut down completely. Prisoners across the galaxy have rights now because you cared about one dragon. A younger Dracovian approached, moving shyly. Her scales were bright green, and she couldn't have been more than 20 years old. Excuse me, are you Mira? The human who freed the elder. I'm Mira, she confirmed, smiling. And Karathos freed himself. I just brought soup. The young dragon's eyes widened. The meal that broke chains. It's a legend now. Will you teach us? The elders say you know how to make it. Mira laughed. It's really not that special. Just minerals and heat. It's more than that, the young dragon insisted. It's a symbol. A reminder that strength comes in many forms. Over the next hour, more dragons gathered. Mira showed them how to combine the minerals their planet provided, how to heat them properly, how to create the soup that had started everything. They listened carefully, these ancient beings learning from a human barely 20 years old. As the twin moons rose, casting purple light across the mountains, the dragons began their evening flight song. It was a tradition Karathos had told her about, something they hadn't been able to perform in centuries. Now 2,000 voices joined in harmony with the singing crystals, creating music that made Myra's chest ache with its beauty. Karathos stood beside her, his eyes reflecting the moonlight. Other species are watching us. The convergence gave us back our world, but they're nervous. They worry we'll seek revenge. Will you? Mira asked. No. We'll build instead. We'll show the galaxy that being powerful doesn't mean being violent. That survival doesn't require cruelty. He paused. We learned that from humans. From you. Humans aren't that special, Mira said. You're wrong. Your species has something rare in the galaxy. You believe that things can change. That individuals matter. That mercy is strength, not weakness. Karathos gestured to the dragons singing above them. Every being here exists because you believed one prisoner deserved dignity. That's power, Mira. Real power. A message chimed on Myra's datapad. It was from Ambassador Okafor. 3 more facilities had requested reforms. 2 species were petitioning for case reviews. The Galactic Rights Commission needed her for another investigation. Duty calls? Karathos asked. Always. Mira looked up at him. But I'll come back. Someone needs to make sure you're all eating properly. The ancient dragon laughed, a sound like warm thunder. We'll be here. This is home now. Thanks to you we have home again. As Mira prepared to leave, young dragons gathered to say goodbye. They pressed small crystals into her hands, gifts that sang softly. The elder dragons bowed their heads in respect. Walking to her ship, Mira thought about how strange her life had become. A maintenance worker who changed galactic law. A human who freed dragons. A girl who proved that sometimes, the smallest acts of compassion could reshape entire worlds. The stars waited above, full of beings who still needed help. And Mira Chin, armed with nothing but stubborn kindness and a recipe for soup, was ready to meet them.